Deion Burks, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma, is an excellent case study in film versus analytics because we're going to get into his all 22 tape. We're going to get into his analytical profile. We're going to put it all together for some actionable fantasy football advice. And John, we land on two different sides of Deion Burks. And I think it's because, we both lean more into a different side of that tape versus analytics conversation. As we get into Deion Burks here, I want to encourage everyone, if you are watching, if you are listening, especially if you're watching, please give the video a like. If you learn even one new thing, drop us a comment. Let us know. We have our sleeper episodes coming up here. This is our last week of profiles. If there's a player you want to make sure we hit on in our wide receiver, running back, tight end sleeper episodes, drop them in the comments and we'll make a point to touch on them. All right. So Deion Burks, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. But John, he's got a little bit of an interesting path to get to the NFL draft. So let's go ahead. Let's get into him.
There are clearly Deion Burks believers out there on social media. And sometimes I see posts where people are waxing poetically about him. And I look at his production model and my wide receiver model, and I have some questions and there are few red flags. So I'm really glad that we get a look at this young man today for our viewers. So who is he? First, he played at Purdue for 3 seasons. And in 2023, that was his 3rd season on campus. And it was by far his best campaign as a Boilermaker. And for bonus out there, can anyone name the quarterback at Purdue in 2023? He had 47 catches for 629 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had taken a red shirt his freshman season at Purdue. And in 3 years, he concludes his tenure with 63 catches for 804 yards and 7 touchdowns. However, there were many of us in the Dynasty community, the Debbie community. We really liked his junior season at Purdue, and we really were impressed by it. And I know personally, when he transferred to Oklahoma, I was pretty optimistic what he would do in the Sooners passing game. And I assumed that they would have a better quarterback throwing the ball to him at Oklahoma, even though we can argue that has not been true. In his last 2 crusades for the Sooners, he had a tough 2024 season, but it was because of the injury bug that slowed him down that year. He had a soft tissue injury in his leg, and then later in the season, he had a concussion. So he only ended up appearing in 5 games that year. He had 31 catches for 245 yards and 3 touchdowns. Last season, he was healthy for the whole year. 57 receptions for 620 yards and 6 touchdowns. During his career, he did carry the football 18 times, but he only had 50 yards. He did return 14 kicks for 278 yards, but those were all when he was playing for Purdue. Matt, my production model has some red flags in it. I like the young man, but let's see what he put on tape this year for our viewers.
Yeah, let's get into the tape because the tape is fun. And again, this is not highlight film. We're showing all of the snaps from 2 different games worth of tape here. And right off the bat, man, we're going to see Deion Burks' extension.
Nice.
That's an excellent catch there. He may be small, man, but he outplays his frame a decent amount here. This one just a bit too high.
That's the quarterbacking I was talking about.
That's the John Mateer experience, baby.
Yes.
All right, so this one you're going to see a nice example. He comes back to the ball. Good. I mean, look at his ability to extend his body, man. A few really nice examples of that on his tape. Playing here over the middle of the field, just a bit low, but he's able to make the adjustment very well.
I mean, look at how many times he has to extend his body and his arms where he really can't get running. Now, there's an opportunity. Yeah, he just took the ball and ran because it was a decent throw.
He's so speedy, man. I mean, he closes space really quickly. There's fast receivers and there's speedy receivers, and he's really quick in short space.
Oh, without question.
A nice example here on this play. We're going to see Deion Burks downfield. Yeah, look at
Yeah.
that. Nice post route over the middle there. That leads to a touchdown. We're going to see this one again from a different angle. Good concentration through traffic there. I know he's open in space, but with that guy coming over the middle of the field, good concentration. Certainly John, who a guy who will get, targets near the line of scrimmage, but it's not exclusive to that.
No, he's not. I'm not trying that, but he's not Zachariah Branch with like 35% behind the line of scrimmage or
Right.
something.
But really nice example there. Put him in motion, give him the ball, and he's able to score a touchdown there on that kind of, just a little pitch. I love this. He breaks the corner here. The Michigan corner. Nice catch along the boundary over the back shoulder. Again, good ball tracking, good late adjustment ability. You will see some examples here, right? When the defensive back is tight on him, when the ball's not on target, he doesn't have the catch radius, right? He's not going to extend to be, a big man frame or anything like that. But when it's within, the realm of possibility, he is bringing the ball in.
Oh, completely agree with you. And I will say this. I wonder what his ceiling could be with a pinpoint passer who could really hit him in stride where he can take advantage of his speediness.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's some really nice twitch. He's getting the defensive backs to bite and freeze as he's working for extra yards. He's pretty scrappy, man. For a player of his size, he is scrappy after the catch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's not afraid of taking a hit, and he definitely takes some pops, I think.
Yeah, really nice acceleration abilities, quick and short space. He wins moving laterally, sharp footwork, explosive through his routes. I think, one thing we didn't really touch on, when watching the film, but a really important piece of why I like Deion Burks, he wins positioning. And I think that really helps him get the most out of his frame, right? So for a slot receiver, he's going to have to win over the middle of the field, right? So that positioning is key. Good hands, late adjustment, ball tracking ability. Again, I mentioned it, limited contested catch ability. He's just not going to have a big catch radius, right? And that always shows up more in the NFL. And I think he's limited to the slot, right? I don't think he's a guy who's going to move around a whole ton. He's going to be inside at the next level. So this is really interesting, though, right? Because we want to put it together, right? We want to put it together to help folks understand the output, right? What's the actual potential fantasy production for Deion Burks? And this was really interesting, John, because when I'm thinking about how I project wide receivers, I do like to consider how they performed at different depths of the field. And so Deion Burks, if you take from 9 yards and below to the line of scrimmage, 86% catch rate. I mean, that is fantastic with really, I don't want to say poor quarterback play, inaccurate quarterback play. Because there's things Mateer does well, right? There are. But relatively inaccurate quarterback play. 86%, that's pretty awesome. And you have to think at the next level, the majority of Deion Burks' targets are going to come within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. Here's one thing I just want you to consider with Deion Burks. He's not really considered a deep field threat. He only caught 18% of his targets at 20 plus yards downfield, but he had a 0% drop rate and he had a decent amount of targets downfield. Again, John, if you're not catching the ball and you don't have a drop rate or you have a 0% drop rate, it's inaccuracy. So my takeaway here is that Deion Burks can win downfield. He has the potential to. We haven't seen that he can't. Low ADOT, 8.6. Low yards per route run, 1.45. Put those together with what I said in the first line here. I think 10 to 10.5 yards per reception is realistic. That's low, but that's not bad. That's pretty on track with a slot receiver projection for me. 14 career touchdowns. That's not super exciting, but he had 7 this past year, or he had 7 total at Oklahoma. He had 4 in 2025. Oklahoma only had 17 total passing touchdowns. So he had a quarter of their total passing touchdowns. He was second on the team. I believe Isaiah Satagna had like 8. So,
yeah.
For every, all things considered, not high touchdown upside, but I think you can put him in for 4 touchdowns, at the next level as a rookie. And again, for a slot receiver, that's not a bad number to get into. So I can see a realistic path to production for Deion Burks, and I do find his tape really encouraging. But John, we give both the tape and the analytics side because there's two sides of every prospect, right? So I've made the tape argument. I want to hear how Burks lines up against your analytic benchmarks here, and why maybe you're going to give the other side of this discussion.
I concur with almost everything you said on tape. And I do like the tape more than my model likes him as a prospect. But there are some red flags that are concerning to me. The number one red flag is his ADOT, 8.6. Now, he's not in the Malachi Corley or the Zachariah Branch bucket for ADOT, but 8.6 is not very good, Matt. It is a clear red flag. So he is lower in my rankings than many people. His yards per reception, 11.1, for all of that speed he has, for all of the quick twitch abilities that he has. I think at times he goes down too easily. Now, part of it is context. He has not played with quarterbacks who were able to zip the football and give him good access to free runways to run. But at the end of the day, his yards per reception is not very good. Team dominator. Because of injuries, because of the offenses that he played in, he never hit that benchmark of 25%. He's only at 20%. And receiving yards per team pass attempt, 1.44. That's a big red flag in my book also. So these red flags have me very concerned. Career receptions, 151. That clears it, but I'm looking for 150. And his catch percentage is 66%. He just exceeds my 65 percentage on that benchmark also. So at the end of the day, he clears 2 of 6 key benchmarks, which is why I'm a little bit lower than most. But Matt, we're here to help fantasy fans. What should they know about him?
Yeah, so let's start with the draft capital conversation, right? And we always start with draft capital because draft capital means opportunity, opportunity means volume, and volume is king for fantasy purposes. I think he's a late day 2 pick. I know, the fantasy community in general is not as high on him, but I'm telling you folks, the NFL likes Deion Burks.
I agree.
There's going to be a role for him. That being said, John, I do think generally speaking, the fantasy community is kind of leaving him behind. And I understand because there's so many good wide receivers in this class that it is easy for Burks to get lost in the sauce a little bit. But I'm telling you, man, if Burks is hanging around in the mid-third round of rookie drafts, which is what I expect, I think his ADP is going to be somewhere 305 to 308 in a super flex. I am going to have a hard time passing on him in that range. So when looking or when trying to give an idea of fantasy production, right, what's realistic for Deion Burks as a rookie 2026 projection? I tried to find a player that lined up with the role I think he's going to play and some of those indicators that I went through earlier, right? So the player that I lined up with is 2025 Josh Downs. Ooh. Josh Downs finished as wide receiver 44 last year, 88 targets, which I think is fairly realistic. I think Burks can be, because remember, Downs is a slot guy too. And Downs was a guy who didn't just play in the slot at college, and he kind of got pushed in there, and he showed the ability to potentially win downfield. That kind of lines up with Burks, right? But I think 80 targets is realistic there. A 66% catch rate for Josh Downs. That actually feels like the minimum that I'll have for Deion Burks, if not higher. But because the Josh Downs ADOT is 9.8, right? And that's what I talked about with Deion Burks. If he's playing around 9.8 yards per reception, then he's going to be, highly successful in terms of catching the ball. 4 touchdowns for Josh Downs last season. That's about right. So I say this because Josh Downs finished as wide receiver 44 in a relatively tame year for Josh Downs. Well, Downs is now in a situation where, depending on what the Colts do at wide receiver, Downs could have 110 targets next season, right? And so I could see Deion Burks fitting into a very similar spot where year one, he's got this wide receiver 4 type projection, but he's got the potential, depending on roster construction and what the other wide receiver volume is, he could potentially be a top 30 wide receiver some seasons, right?
Yeah.
And if you're drafting that guy in the mid to late 3rd round of your rookie drafts, like, that's pretty good for me. I think the tape shows me enough to, kind of look past some of those legitimate analytical limitations here that we presented. So, Burks, like I said, he's getting lost in the sauce a little bit, but I think he's an excellent case study here for looking at tape, looking at analytics here, and kind of finding that right point of value in between. But John, all of our viewers and listeners, they don't have to wait to find the right point of value, because we've already got it for them over at patreon.com/rookiebigboard. Folks, if you've been watching all these rookie profiles and you're not supporting us over at patreon.com/rookiebigboard, I encourage you to seriously consider it, because it's not only supporting us, it's supporting yourself. You're getting access to the 100+ page rookie guide, full projections. Every single rookie will be added into the projection sheet within an hour of being drafted. Dynasty rookie Devy rankings directly equivalent. You can compare values across format. So much available over at patreon.com/rookiebigboard. Folks, we are going to be back real soon with our final rookie profile of this 2026 rookie class.